Good evening, this is Mrs. Sahar Fuad again with you. Hi back. Well, we were speaking about the origins of sports, and we started our first video, the first part, with the rugby and how did it originate. Then we proceeded to the basketball and how was it evolved. Now, the third game. We're going to speak about baseball. Now, my dear students, please pay attention and concentrate fully on this passage, especially because it's full of names. Maybe it can mix you a little bit up, but try to follow with me and you will understand how things go. Let's go together and see. An all-American sport. In 1905, a famous sports writer named Henry Chadwick wrote an article suggesting that baseball evolved from the Old English game of rounders. This upsets Albert Spalding, one of the game's earliest players and a manufacturer of sports equipment. Now, to understand how things go, again, I'd like to start with the setting so that you can be following the time, the place, and so that you can follow the sequence of the events. America, 1905. It means the beginning of the last century, the 20th century. A man called Henry Chadwick. Henry Chadwick is a sports writer. He used to write in magazines, in sports magazines and so on. He suggested something, that the game known as baseball comes or evolves from the English or the British game called rounders. Do you understand until now so far? Well, this didn't move smoothly, but many people got upset. Many people got upset, especially the patriotic men. Someone called Albert Spalding, an American man, he got upset, as I told you. He got upset, as I told you. Who is that Albert Spalding? Let's see. He's one of the game's earliest players. He is one of the game's earliest players. Not only this, but also he is a manufacturer of sports equipment. He had a factory and he manufactures and produces or produced and manufactured sports equipment. He resolutely refused to accept that the great American game did not originate in America. You see, as a patriotic man, he refused completely, resolutely, to accept that this game comes from somewhere else other than America. British, to have a British origin like the other one claimed, Henry Chadwick. So what did he do accordingly? Let's see. Spalding organized a commission of 7 prominent and patriotic men to determine the true origin of baseball. He made a commission. Commission means lagna, a group of people, considerable people, patriotic men, patriotic American men, prominent, to determine in the issue, to reach a decision in that issue. All right, what did this commission do? Let's see. They were asked to determine the true origin of baseball. The project was widely reported in the newspaper. As you know, at that time, newspapers, not even the TV or even the radio, was or has that great effect on the society. It was like the social media nowadays. The newspaper was something important and there was nobody who didn't follow reading them. Everybody in the society follow and read them. Okay, so that issue was widely spread and it was widely reported in the newspapers. In charge of the commission was Colonel Mills of New York. Now pay attention, my dear students. Now another name, third name. What's his name again? Colonel Mills of New York. Who's the man? Who's that Colonel Mills of New York? He had played baseball before, and during the Civil War, he played baseball before and during the Civil War. That man, he played baseball during and before the Civil War. The Civil War in America, it was a war, an internal war between the North and the South, between the North and the South, until they united again later on. Not only this, he didn't only play the baseball before and during the Civil War, but what else? He was the fourth president of the baseball league, like here Murtada Mansour for Zamalek, for example, and so on. So he had a title, he had a high title in the game. Actually, he was the fourth president of the National League in 1884. The commission's investigations were essentially at a dead end. They were at a dead end. They didn't reach a decision. They couldn't. They searched a lot. They tried to know the feedbacks or the historical background, but they came to a dead end. They couldn't reach a decision. The commission, but headed by Colonel Mills, they didn't reach a decision until. Do you think what happened? Let's see. On that time, until Abner Graves, a mining engineer from Denver who was traveling through Ohio at that time, happened to see a newspaper article about it. What broke the events? Another man called Abner Graves. He's called Abner Graves. Remember that name. Abner Graves, he was a mining engineer, an engineer who works in mines. Do you know the mines? The places where we can get iron, copper, all those precious metals, coal, things like this. So he is an engineer of mines. That man was traveling to Ohio and he saw the article. You know what did he do? He sat down in his hotel room and he thought about that situation and he wrote a long letter. He wrote a long letter to the Mills Commission. He wrote that letter to the Mills Commission. In the letter, Graves stated categorically that at Cooperstown in 1839, he had watched a U.S. Army officer. Okay, again, let's focus, let's stress on the setting of this part, that in 1839, as he saw, as he watched, as he witnessed that man, Abner Graves, he watched an American or a U.S. Army officer called Abner Doubleday. Another man. Now count with me. Count the names. We're going to count them and speak about them at the end of the video. He had watched a U.S. Army officer called Abner Doubleday stretching a baseball pitch on the ground. Stretching or scratching, here it's written scratching out, like stretching out a baseball pitch on the ground, and instructing other young men how to play baseball with the teams of 11 players and 4 bases. That man, Abner Graves, as he wrote in his letter. He wrote that long time ago, in the year 1839, in Cooperstown, he himself had seen a man called what? Abner Doubleday. What does he work, or what did he work? He was a U.S. Army officer. He saw that man scratching a baseball pitch and teaching or instructing other young men how to play the baseball, and he divided them into 11 players and 4 bases according to the shape of the game, as you may know it. Graves, the other one, the first one. Graves described how the ball that they used was made of roughly stitched horsehide and stuffed with rags. Even the small details, the little details he spoke about in his letter. That man, Abner Graves, he described the ball. It was like stitched, sewed, and filled with or stuffed with clothes, rags, little piece of clothes. Okay, that was it. When the commission received the letter, what do you think they felt? What do you think they felt when they knew that this invention wasn't or didn't evolve from the British game of rounders, and it came originally from an American U.S. Army officer, and it proved to be totally, wholly, purely American? They felt elated. They felt overjoyed. They felt good, I shall say. Then they promptly proclaimed baseball was invented by an American Army officer. They took the decision and they claimed or proclaimed that baseball evolved from an American, pure American origin, according to what they have read from the letter of Abner Graves. Are you following up till now? Okay. Abner Doubleday in Cooperstown in 1839, the Army officer, was the first one to invent the game, as it was said in the letter. The only evidence for this was the testimony of Graves. This decision was taken by the commission headed by Colonel Mills, yes. Okay. According to the testimony of Abner Graves, according to what Abner Graves had seen, that was his witness. But do you think we should take, or we should make a whole history based on the testimony of someone, only one witness? You know that we need at least two respectable witnesses, at least, to take something to be historical. To take something to be historical, actually, we need at least two witnesses, and they must be rightful witnesses, not any kind of witnesses. Do you know why do I say that? Actually, in Islam we have that. But let's resume with the story. That witness wasn't reliable at all. You know why? 1 year later, he murdered his wife. The only witness to speak about the origin and the history of baseball. 1 year later, he murdered his wife, and he was insane, and he was put in an asylum for the insane people. Can you imagine that? So his testimony wasn't or couldn't be reliable at all because of this. He was a criminal. He was first a criminal. Also, he was insane. Now, thank you so much, my dear student, this was Mrs. Sahar Fuad with you. Let's resume again that part of the an all-American sport, the baseball. How many names did we have? Actually, Henry Chadwick, the sports writer, the one who claimed that the baseball evolved from British origin, the game called rounder. Then Albert Spalding, the enthusiastic, patriotic American who took on his nerves to prove that the baseball game, is American, and he formed the committee, or he formed the commission. Okay, that was the second name. Now, the third name, Colonel Mills. His name is Colonel Mills of New York, Colonel Mills of New York, and he is an old baseball player. He played before and during the Civil War, and the fourth president of the National League in 1884. That was Colonel Mills of New York. I forgot to tell you something, to remind you something of Albert Spalding. Spalding, yes, he was a manufacturer of sports equipment, and that. Then the fourth person, Abner Graves. Abner Graves, the witness, the only witness who stated the fact that it refers back to an American or a U.S. Army officer who was the first one to play the baseball and scratch a pitch and invent a ball for it. So Abner Graves is an engineer, a mining engineer, and later we discovered that he killed his wife, he murdered his wife, and he was put in an asylum for insane people. That was the fourth one. And the fifth one is called Abner Doubleday. Abner Doubleday, that was the historical figure, the U.S. Army officer, the one who was claimed to be seen by Abner Graves, the one who first played baseball, and so on. So we have 5 names in this historical recount. If you want to know more, you can refer back to the internet, to the history of this kind of game, and we can discuss it later. Thank you so much, and we will meet again in the grammar part of the unit. Thank you and goodbye.